that will shape Asia's fourth largest economy for the next 5 years. MPs cramped next to each other, a packed public gallery at the House of Commons, and a president addressing the House
next to each other,
a packed public gallery at the House of Commons.
When
and
Volodymyr
Zelensky
addressed the House of Commons on Thursday, he called Ukraine's struggle similar to that of Britain under
the House of
Churchill.
Commons on Thursday, he called
England under
Ukraine's
Churchill
struggle
did not bend to the
similar
Nazis.
to that of Britain
Ukraine under
Zelensky won't give in to
England under
Vladimir
Churchill
Putin,
did
he
not
said.
bend to the Nazis.
Ukraine under Zelensky won't give in to Vladimir Putin, he said.
Ми вже почали брати десятками. Ми вже почали брати десятками.
We do not want to lose what we have, what is ours, our country, just as you did. We do not want to lose what we have, what is ours, preparing to start the battle, just as you did not want to lose your island when the Nazis were preparing to start the battle.
Zelensky says that Ukraine will fight till the end, but his last climb down doesn't sound like Churchill at all.
Zelensky says that Ukraine will fight till the end, but his last climb down doesn't sound like Churchill.
Neville Chamberlain was
In
Britain's
fact,
Prime
it sounds more
Minister
like
from
Chamberlain.
1937 to 1940. In
Neville Chamberlain was
1938,
Britain's
Chamberlain
Prime
signed
Minister
a
from
peace deal with
1937
Hitler
to
1940.
Germany could
In
invade
1938,
Finland,
Chamberlain
but
signed
no
a
more.
peace deal
Chamberlain
with
thought
Hitler.
that
he had succeeded.
Germany could
but the
invade
very next year,
Finland,
Hitler invaded
but no more.
Poland. Chamberlain
And
thought
World
that
War
he
II
had
broke out.
succeeded, but the
The
very
Ukrainian
next year,
president is
Hitler
not
invaded
making any
Poland,
deals with Putin
and World
yet.
War II broke
But
out.
he's making some major
The
concessions.
Ukrainian president is not making
Zelensky
any
says
deals
he
with
has
Putin
cooled
yet,
down on the NATO
but he's
membership
making
bid.
some major concessions.
He says that the military alliance
Zelensky
is
says
afraid
he
to
has
confront
cooled down
Russia,
on the
and
NATO
it is
membership
apparent
bid.
that NATO is not
He says that the
prepared to
military
accept
alliance is
Ukraine.
afraid to confront Russia.
This is a
and
major
it is
climb
apparent
down from his earlier
that NATO
comments
is
and
not
demands.
prepared to accept Ukraine.
This is a major climb down from his earlier comments
We
and
understand
demands.
that NATO membership would ensure our security and our territorial integrity. We understand
This
that
is
NATO
also
membership
enshrined
would
in the
ensure our
Ukrainian
security and our
legislation, in the
territorial
constitution
integrity
of Ukraine.
This is also enshrined in the Ukrainian legislation, in the constitution of Ukraine.
Zelensky had
This is
rather
a
made
major
a
climb down from his earlier comments.
Understand that NATO membership
does
would
not
ensure
want
our
Zelensky had
security
rather
and our
made a
territorial
concession for
integrity.
something.
We understand
He
that
says
NATO
he
membership
does
would
not- but this
ensure
isn't the
our
only
security
concession
and
that
our
is
territorial
Ukrainian
integrity.
president was even open
This
to
is
more
also
compromise.
enshrined
But
in
this
the
is the
Ukrainian
major concession. Rebel held areas of Donetsk and leave an open to
Zelensky had rather made a climb down from his
concessions
earlier
are
comments
exactly
and
what
demands.
Russia has demanded.
Yesterday, Russia
Zelensky's
laid down 4
concessions are
demands to end the
exactly what
invasion.
Russia has
1.
demanded.
Ukraine
Yesterday,
must stop all
Russia laid
military
down
action.
4 demands to end
2.
the invasion.
Ukraine must
1.
change its
Ukraine
constitution
must
to
stop
enshrine
all
neutrality.
military action.
Now this
Understand
actually means
that
that
NATO
and he
membership
does
would
not
ensure
Zelensky
our
has rather
security
made a
and
concession
territorial
for something.
integrity.
This
We
is
understand
means
that
that
NATO
and he
membership
does
would
not
ensure
acknowledge
our
Russia
security
that
and
Russia
territorial
is
integrity.
to
This is also
recognize
enshrined in
but
the
this is the
Ukrainian
nation
legislation,
rebel held areas
in
of
the
Donetsk and leave an open
Ukraine.
Zelensky had rather made a climb down from his earlier
Rebel
comments.
held areas
It has been
Russia has
14 days
demanded.
since Russia invaded
Yesterday,
Ukraine.
Russia
Zelensky's
laid down 4
concessions are
demands to end the
exactly what
invasion.
Russia has
1.
demanded. Ukraine must
Yesterday,
stop all
Russia laid
military
down
action.
4 demands to end
2.
the invasion.
Ukraine must
1.
change its
Ukraine
constitution
must
to
stop
enshrine
all
neutrality.
military action.
Now this
Understand
actually means
that
that
NATO
and he
membership
does
would
not
ensure our
Zelensky has
security
rather
and
made a
territorial
concession for something.
integrity. We understand that NATO
and he
membership
does not
would
acknowledge
ensure our
Russia
security
that
and
rebel
territorial
held
integrity.
areas
This is also enshrined
but
in
this
the
is the
Ukrainian
nation
legislation,
rebel held
in the
areas of
constitution
Donetsk and leave an open
Well,
Zelensky had rather made a climb down from his
message
earlier
sounds
comments.
slightly
It has been 14 days since
right now,
Russia invaded
yesterday, because we
Ukraine.
also
Russia
have
laid down 4
some
demands to end the
clarifications
invasion.
from the president's party
Ukraine must
later,
stop all
Russia
military
laid
action.
down
4 demands to end the invasion. Ukraine must
given
change
up
its
on
Ukraine
the
must
general
stop all
course of
military
Ukraine,
action. Now this
Understand
actually means
that
that
NATO
and he
membership
does
would
not
ensure
Zelensky
joining NATO is part of the Ukrainian constitution, and also we know very, very well that Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014 when we were officially a neutral state, when we were a non-allied state without any aspirations to join NATO. So frankly speaking, pretending that Putin will just be okay with changing our constitution is
Wanting fighter jets from Poland. Ukraine had repeatedly called for fighter jets from the West. Ukraine can use to protect its airspace. The Ukrainian Air Force uses Soviet-made MiG-29 and Sukhoi fighter jets, but its air force is far outnumbered by the Russian ones. So Ukraine wants more fighter jets to defend their skies. Ukraine probably has around 37 to 70 MiG-29s, and all of them inherited from the Soviet Union back in 1991. Ukrainian military pilots are not trained to fly US fighter jets. They are far more equipped to handle a MiG or an Su plane. So what they need currently are jets from the former Soviet nations. The most obvious choice, of course, is Poland, which is why the NATO nation was looking into a three-way deal with the United States. Poland would donate its old MiGs to Ukraine. In return, it wanted US F-16s as a replacement. But here's where the problem comes. Transferring fighter jets to Ukraine is not easy. Polish pilots can't fly them to Ukraine, and this is because Polish pilots are NATO pilots. And this could mean a direct involvement in the conflict. So here's what Poland proposed. It offered to send these jets to the US Ramstein base in Germany. Poland's proposal reflects its own sensitivity. The country is, of course, a part of NATO, but it does not want direct conflict with Russia. And neither does the US, which rejected the proposal outright. Because if the jets were transferred by US troops from a NATO territory, it would then raise the same problems and questions. Currently, neither of the two sides, that is Poland and the US, want to be direct stakeholders in the conflict. The only loser here is Ukraine. That is not getting the fighter jets that it desperately needs. Now, to discuss this more, we still have our guests on this broadcast, Ina Sofson from Kiev and Peter Klepp from Brussels. Ina, I'd like your perspective on this. US Vice President Kamala Harris, as we understand, is now heading to Poland to discuss how to provide military assistance for Ukraine after Washington rejected Warsaw's offer for fighter jets. How do you perceive this development? Is NATO divided at this point in this conflict?
Well, it appears they are. And also, I think that they are slightly misconceiving the reaction of Putin, frankly speaking, because the world has to understand that Putin doesn't really need a real reason if he wants to engage with NATO states. If he would want to engage with the NATO states, and he already said that he wants to, he already said that he doesn't like Poland in NATO, he doesn't like Hungary in NATO, he doesn't like the Baltic states in NATO, he has issues with Finland and Sweden's neutrality. So if he wants to invade, he will invade. And that is a difficult thought to grasp, that is a difficult reality to take on, but the world needs to understand that he doesn't really need a real reason to invade in case he wants to do so. He can claim that he doesn't like the colors of the Swedish flag because they're the same as Ukrainian, and that can be the reason for invasion if he decides so. Just like in Ukraine, he didn't really have a real reason to invade. He made them up. And that is important to understand and just to accept. And now this saga, as you rightly called it, is, frankly speaking, is just what it is. It's discussion about technicalities, while we have people being killed every hour here. Just this morning, a new attack killed 2 babies under 1 year old, bombarded from air again, and we get that every single day. And now just pretending that that these technicalities can prevent Putin from invading. I do think that is a misconception. I very much believe that Putin is as crazy as we all believe he is. And if he wants to invade, he will find reasons to invade anyways. So what we're asking for now is just to allow us to stop him at the earliest stages, to allow to make sure we don't have that many casualties as we can have. That is why we're asking for those jets so very, very badly. All of us, parliamentarians,
right.
Everyone else.
Ina, I just want to interrupt you there, and I want your perspective on an update just coming in. Now, Ukraine says that it is open to Russia's neutrality demand, but won't yield territory. Now, this is the report that's just coming in. Once again, is this a sign that Ukraine is willing to make concessions in this war?
Well, wouldn't be able to comment on that because that is just coming up. So we didn't have any communication with the president or the government on this specific issue. But again, neutrality or not, that is mainly a political statement, right? It's not a legal decision to be made. So I don't really know how to comment on that right now. It's just that we all understand that regardless whether we are officially neutral or not, again, that would never be a reason for Putin to stop a potential invasion.
Right. Peter, I'd like you to comment on the same. Do you see a certain change in tone or stance in the Ukrainian president? Is he willing to accommodate or compromise to a certain extent? The recent update, of course, that we have is that Ukraine seems to be open to Russia's neutrality demand.
Well, frankly, not really. I remember some time ago also Zelensky said something similar. And I think the problem has never been that Ukraine was not open to diplomacy. The problem is, of course, Russian aggression. I mean, to go back to the issue of the jets, I think that's actually very tricky. And what happened was that ultimately the Pentagon overruled those in the states that were open to providing jets to Ukraine. Now, it's of course true that Putin is very incalculable and that if he wants to, he can come up with an excuse to attack any NATO state. But that's not the same as to say that NATO states should intervene and should mingle in this conflict. And it's very unclear from what point they would be intervening, but many believe that providing fighter jets would cross that line.
Right, absolutely. Just some final comments from both of you as to where you see this conflict, this war rather, headed in the next few days. Ina, I'd like to ask you for your final remarks on this. We've seen big American giants such as Starbucks, McDonald's and other big companies leave Russia as it is under heavy sanctions, sweeping sanctions imposed by the West. Is anything going to faze President Putin at this point?
Oh, before I start answering that, I just got a message from my team, and they sent a message by the Mariupol deputy mayor, and he says that about 10 minutes ago, so about half an hour ago, the Russians have bombarded a maternity hospital in Mariupol with many women who were about to give birth or just gave birth, now dead.
Right, Ina, we'd like to confirm that at our end as well, before we air this sensitive information, of course, so we'd like to confirm the same at our end as well.
But well, that is what they have been doing, and there is no excuse for what they're doing here in Ukraine. And I really do not think that there is any diplomatic solution to the situation, except for just militarily kicking them out of the country. So what we expect is just more support from the West. And we are seeing that the sanctions are doing its toll. We are seeing that the sanctions are weighing in on the Russian economy. It's just that this is happening too slowly. And we want that to be happening faster, because every day of delay, every day of discussing the more diplomatic solution to the sanctions or to the jet issue, they all lead to new death here in Ukraine. And that is what we want to avoid.
Right, absolutely. I'm afraid we're running out of time at this point on this broadcast. I'd like to thank both our guests, Ina and Peter, for joining us on this broadcast with all your inputs.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Moving on now, Ukraine wants tough security guarantees from Russia. The country's foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, has proposed that the new security guarantees should replace the Budapest Memorandum.